bad.
What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Varandas, also known as Ricky Varandas. And today we have stand-up comedian and now author, Jim Florentine. You guys might know him from The Metal Show on VH1. He's been in a bunch of movies. He has a bunch of stand-up specials. And now a new book called Everybody is Awful Except You. So definitely check that out. You can get access to all that stuff on his website, jimflorentine.com. Really fun conversation. We talked about metal. We talked about comedy. We talked about conspiracies. And I'm not really good at interviewing people. I kind of suck at interviewing people, but I'm pretty good at holding a conversation. I think that's kind of the one talent I'm really good at. And it helps on this show because I go wherever the conversation takes us. And I know there's pros and cons to sometimes getting off topic or off track. But I think the pros outweigh the cons, where a lot of times you hear certain guests on multiple interviews and it's telling a lot of the same stories and talking about a lot of the same topics, where on my show, you can, at least in many cases, you can assume that I'm probably going to bring something up that's maybe off topic or go on some long rant that's going to get us off topic, and maybe hear a story or hear us talk about a topic or subject that you haven't heard this guest talk about prior. So I think that's what makes it fun, and that's what makes it fun for me. And at this point, I'm not making any money doing this. It's just about sparking some interesting conversations with some interesting people, and hope I can spread it and start our own little ripple. So that's the goal at the moment. So with that said, also thanks everybody who checked out the last couple episodes. It's doing really well. The last episode, the Swapcast, I did with Sam Tripoli from Tinfoil Hat Podcast, Pat Militich, and Jeffrey Wilson from The Conspiracy Farm, and James Corver from The Corbett Report, all past guests on the show. We all got together to do a Swapcast, which I actually did after this Jim Florentine podcast. I usually put them out in order, but those guys were really excited about getting that out ASAP. So I edited and got that one out prior to this one. So if we refer to Thanksgiving or whatnot and it seems like, hey, you know, things are a little out of order, that's why this one was actually recorded prior to my last one. Also, the Jfk Assassination podcast I did with 3 experts is doing really well, with Russ Baker and James D. Eugenio, and Jeffrey Morley is doing really well too. So check those podcasts out. If you haven't, subscribe to us on YouTube. RV Theory 6 is the YouTube channel. I know some people have put my show on their YouTube channels. That's completely fine. It's all open source. It's about spreading this work and spreading these conversations and spreading the work of my guests. And so if there's a podcast, interview, or conversation, whatever you want to call it, that I've done that you find interesting or you think is important to share, please do that. And I don't get mad. Go ahead, share it. As long as it's obviously unedited, in the sense of you're not making people sound like they have opinions they don't really have or whatnot, or cutting and pasting and stuff like that, then I'm completely cool with it. It's really important just to kind of get this information out there. So also, when people call in using video, did I say this already? I don't think I have. When people call in using video on our YouTube channel, you can actually see me and the guest have the conversation. You can visually see us. So that's a reason to subscribe to us on YouTube. We're now on Spotify, so rate us and subscribe to us on there. We're on iTunes, obviously, and all the other podcast apps. Also Google Play. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RVTheory6. And also, the Ripple Effect Podcast has a Facebook page, and I have a personal Facebook page. So you're more than welcome to like or friend request me if you're a fan of the show. If you're somebody I don't know and seem, I'm not sure of, don't know if it's a robot or spam or something like that, then just throw me a message. Let me know that you're a listener to the show, and I have no problem accepting friend requests. So please do that. And I think that's it. Share the show. tweet the show, put it on your social medias, and also in the show description on our YouTube channel, we have links to all the guests' work. And also, I don't probably say this as often as I should, but we also have a Patreon page. You can find that in the show description. So support the show if you're a fan of it. And I know I put it out there for free, but the goal is still one day to do this full time, even though I'm very far from that goal. But until I reach it, for now, I'm just really enjoying being a part of this movement. I'll keep this short. I always say that, and I don't. But this time, I will cut it off now. See you guys. Peace.
Hello.
Hey, Jim. How are you? It's Ricky Brandes from Ripple.
What's going on, man?
Hey, how are you? Hey, you want to do
like the Iron Maiden shirt?
No, yeah. I'm a big
getting the light over here. Yeah.
Big Maiden fan. That was I think Peace of Mind. I think it was my first metal album I ever bought, and I had the cassette growing up, and I don't know, for some reason till this day Iron Maiden still they have a soft spot in my heart.
Where Eagles Dare, the first song on that album, is my favorite Maiden song.
Yeah, that whole album was great. I remember when I first started playing the guitar, I would attempt to just, play that whole album through. I would play the cassette, and I would try to, and I didn't know how to play them correctly, but I was just kind of just figuring it out and trying to get it close. And I just couldn't keep up with the speed. I was always amazed by the pace they would play at, and just that just the muting and how just constantly going. It was just like, it's amazing at their age that they're still playing those songs. They're playing long sets and killing it at the way they are. It's pretty wild. But but thanks a lot for being with me. I really appreciate it. I've been a huge fan of yours for a while. I've seen you locally. Well, I'm from Massachusetts. I've seen you at the Funny Bone down in Hartford, the strange nightclub that is called Hartford Funny Bone, but it's in Manchester, and I've seen you there quite a few times. Actually, you're just down there recently. I was trying to make my way down there, but with kids, as you know, it's not always easy to get a sitter and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I don't even know where to start, because you're an East Coast guy. I'm a East Coast guy. We both come from big Catholic families and into metal. And I was a fan of yours even back in the day when you're doing the metal show. And obviously, I love East Coast comedy. I think there's something about just the rawness of it. I've always been more drawn to how honest, people are in the East Coast, and they're not as sensitive. Even though that seems to be changing a little bit. I don't know if you seem to see that a little bit and doing stand up. Do you feel like today, compared to when you started doing stand up, that comedians are censoring themselves a little bit because of how quickly people seem to be offended?
Yeah, comedians are doing that, and they, I don't know why they're doing it. They got no balls. They're a bunch of babies. They're just trying to conform and fit in. Comics are supposed to be rebels and be edgy and out there and dangerous. And everyone's just afraid. So no, I just do whatever the fuck I do. I don't care. I've always been like that. I'm like, if the industry doesn't like it, too bad. Because I know when I'm in a club and it's 10:30. You saw me at the Funny Bone. The fucking the comedy club's in a mall in Manchester. So yeah. 10:30 on a Friday night, and I go on stage at 11:20, and they're drunk. I got to win them over. I got to do an hour, and I got to make sure I'm the best guy on the show, and they have a great time and they want to come back. That's part of being a comic. That's a big part of being a comic. And whatever I got to do, I got to do. I'm not going to be a hack up there, but I got to push buttons. I love pushing buttons. There's nothing better as a comic to push buttons and see what kind of reaction you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, Patrice O'Neal, remember when he was on Fox News some years ago, and he was talking about, just kind of explaining the idea of funny. And when you make a joke, you don't necessarily know how it's going to be taken. And if your intentions are to be funny, then that's the most important part. Like, it doesn't, if it offends somebody, everything can offend somebody. There's sensitive people out there. But if your intentions are to be funny, then it shouldn't, like, there should be no line that can't be, passed and stepped over. I think that, people like Patrice O'Neal, Nick DiPaolo, I was a big fan of Greg Giraldo back in the day. Obviously a big fan of yourself, Joe Rogan. I mean, a lot of these East Coast comedians, I liked the fact that they were honest. They didn't give a shit about stepping over the line, and if it's funny, and people like Daniel Tosh and some other younger comedians are still doing it now. But
Anthony Jeselnik is doing it.
Yeah.
I just saw Bill Burr at Madison Square Garden. Talk about a guy going over the line.
I know.
His new stuff is great, man. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, he was also just at in Boston at the Garden, and then he was locally at in Springfield, also near where I'm from. I'm from this town, Ludlow, right outside of Springfield, Massachusetts. And yeah, Bill Burr. I think Bill Burr is almost the Nirvana of our time when it comes down to comedy, because it's almost like there was, the same way that like hair metal was, people were so sick of like the same old shit, and Nirvana came and it was just so different. It was like for a little bit all the popular comedians were a little toned down and whatnot, and then Bill Burr comes and he just doesn't give a fuck, and he just offends everybody and anybody. And he's willing to do it if he's doing a morning show, if he's doing like Good Morning America, whatever. He's always Bill Burr, if he's doing Conan O'Brien. And I think people love that honesty. And I think we need more of that. We need more comedians. But the thing is, too, it's just like, I'm sure there's, with yourself, I mean, you've made a living being yourself. And I think that's what I love about people like yourself, Bill Burr, Joe Rogan. It doesn't matter which podcast you're being interviewed on, what show, radio station you're being interviewed on. Jim Florentine is always Jim Florentine. You always get the same guy. And I think that's a just fresh air for a lot of us who know that a lot of these guys are toning it down, or they put out this appearance, or maybe they're afraid of offending somebody. They don't want to step on any toes. Maybe they don't want to offend a certain political party or a political ideology or religious people or whatnot. And I think the comedians that last are guys like yourself who, there's a reason why you've been doing it for so long and successfully, because you've been honest, and this is who you are, and you haven't been trying to ride any trends or just do what's hip at the moment. You've always been yourself. And do you think that's been kind of one of the keys to your success?
Yeah, I think so. It's look, I always ask every comedy club owner around the country, wherever I'm performing, I go, hey, are more people walking out? Are more people offended these days at the shows? And they go, absolutely not. They go, no, not at all. They go, it's actually less. They goes, because most people will research a comedian now. There's always a video clip of them online, so they're not walking in blindly into a comedy club. And they pretty much know the comedians that are going to perform, and they know the kind of sense of humor. So we're not getting that. People are walking out and being offended at clubs for years. So I'm not seeing, it's more of the media just pushing this agenda that everybody's so offended by everything. Those people don't come to comedy clubs. You know what I mean? So it's like, we shouldn't be playing to those people, because they would never come to a comedy club anyway. They got no sense of humor. So like, you don't want to gear your act around someone on Twitter that doesn't understand stand-up comedy. You know, so it's really not happening in the clubs, and that people love it. You know what I mean? When you're just on it. Bill just did 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden. He killed did an hour and a half of material. And it's just like, they just know they're coming to see Bill, and they don't give a shit. They're like, I just want to have a good time, have a few laughs, have a couple of beers. I don't get, I'm not going to get offended. No one's getting offended. No one walked out of there offended.
Yeah. The reason I ask, I had a buddy of mine who saw him at the Springfield show when he was here in Massachusetts, not the Boston show, but the Springfield one. And he's like myself, a huge comedy fan. And he said that there was this awkwardness that for some reason, and this might be the exception to the rule, because like you said, he's doing the Garden, he's doing a huge stadium, so he's obviously a huge hit, and his Netflix specials are doing really well. And so I think he's doing really well. But apparently, because I asked him, like, how was the show? And he's like, there was this awkwardness because Bill noticed that some people were kind of quiet during some of the jokes, and like he felt like he was offending them, and he kind of called out the crowd and stuff. And that's the other thing I love about comedians, is that you can call people out. You can be honest. You don't have to stick to the script. You can say, fuck it, I'm gonna, if this show is going shitty or not going as planned, you can call people out. And but yeah, it's weird, because I think comedy should be that. Every art form, and you're a big music fan just like myself. And I've had musicians on here like Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory and others, and the thing about music, like the music to me that seems the most interesting are people who don't just stick to some genre or try to fit within a box, but the ones who say, no, art should be should go wherever it takes me. If this is where the writing takes me, if this is where my imagination takes me, then just go there, regardless of what people think or whatnot. And almost write like, when I was writing music, I always had to convince myself, I'm like, write like nobody's going to listen to this. So, and then that way I don't censor myself. And do you ever find yourself, or, I mean, you probably don't have a problem doing that, but do you ever catch yourself like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this joke or write this joke or say this publicly because it might be too far?
Well, there's sometimes I'm like, that's probably not. It's kind of like I just went to a strip club the other night, right? And it was all these like ghetto chicks, and they all had fucking ass implants, and I haven't seen that. Like, they all get the Kim Kardashian, they got the big ass, so they got all ass implants. They don't get the breast implants anymore.
Yeah, it's
right. It was really weird. I haven't been to a strip club in a long time. It was kind of like a ghetto strip club. So every girl had like 8 out of 10 had big ass implants, and it looked so freakish on their skinny legs. And you could see how fucking fake it was. And then I was like, but they were all like black and Spanish chicks in it. And it was all like, it was mostly like black and Spanish guys in the club. And I go, well, they're attracting that because black guys like a big ass. White guys don't necessarily care about that. They'd rather have tits than a big ass. And I'm like, so I was tipping the dancers. I had like 50 singles on the bar, and every fucking dancer was coming over in like 2 seconds. I was getting bombarded. And then I realized, because I'm the only guy with money on the bar, all the black guys, they're not tipping. I go, so you got the ass implants, you brought the black guys in the club, and now you're not getting any tips.
Yeah.
The white guys aren't coming anymore because they don't like the big fucking Kim Kardashian ass. Those are the guys that will give you the tips. Well, so the black guys would just sit. Because I looked at like the next 20 guys around me around the bar were all black guys, and they weren't even walking towards them because none of them were tipping. So they were just coming to me.
Yeah,
so I was almost going to do a joke like that on stage, but I'm like, it's kind of hacky, and it's like I don't need the audience to groan at that, like those black guys don't tip, So I just like I'm not going to do that. But I was thinking about that, and I was telling my friend that. He was laughing. I go, yeah, but I'm not going to use it on stage. I wasn't a friend to be like, oh, it's a racial joke. I'm just like, it's kind of hacky, and I'd rather lose them on something else edgier, like something about Me Too, which I've been talking about on stage. I'd rather lose them on something like that.
Yeah. Well, you see, the only thing about, like now every comedian's jumping on the Trump train. It's like it's almost like low hanging fruit. It's too easy.
It's a Polish joke. It
really is. Yeah.
What is the Polish guy does something stupid at the end? It's the cop eating a donut. A cop you Dunkin' Donuts. That was always a thing. Like a comedian knew. Everyone had a cop eating a donut joke, and any good comedian knew don't do that joke because everybody else is doing it. And when everybody's going up there going, I'm in Los Angeles. Every comedian walks up there. Hey, I just want to say before I start my set, fuck Donald Trump. And the crowd claps like, ooh, what a rebel you are.
I know.
Why don't you just say, give it up for the troops?
Yeah.
You fucking sell out.
Yeah. It's easy. It's just too easy. Like you're just trying to, play to the crowd. I mean, really, you're being a politician. You're doing the same thing that you're basically accusing Donald Trump of doing, and that's playing to the crowd.
Look, I know these comics, just because one comic became political on Twitter, then they all started following. They know nothing about politics. They know nothing about nothing. They know how to write good jokes, and that's it. But they're all followers. Judd Apatow puts out a bunch of tweets anti-Trump. And, Judd Apatow basically, can help every comic out there. And Judd's helped me. He's casted me in a couple things. I got nothing against Judd. But if Judd starts putting out anti-Trump tweets, and I would comics like, Judd might put me in his movie, so I got to do the same thing he's doing. That's all they're doing. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
If Hollywood was run by Republicans, they'd all be pro-Trump. They just sell their soul for whatever they need to do to get to the next level. That's all they're doing.
No, I remember when Eminem came out with that. Remember when he did like that little freestyle about Trump, and I'm just
seriously, my 8-year-old son could have wrote better lyrics to that.
It was
embarrassing.
It was horrendous. I'm like, you didn't.
It was the worst thing I've ever seen. It's like that guy was the one who railed against whatever everyone else was doing, like didn't like. Like you think he would take the other angle on it, but he didn't. And I'm like, you're just like my plumber on Facebook bitching about Trump. You're the same guy now.
It really, because there was no depth to it. There was like nothing creative about it. There was nothing. It's not like it didn't even look like he did any research on it. It was almost like you're just. I mean, and we are tribal creatures. We and people have joined this. Either you're pro or anti. And I remember when the campaign was going on, because I've had a lot of people on the show. I've had people like Roger Stone on, who's political consultant for Trump and whatnot. But I've had a lot of progressives on too. I've had Lee Camp on, who's a progressive comedian, and others. And the thing is that, like, to me, it's like if you're open to have a discussion and have a discussion about ideas and not just challenge other people's ideas, but have your ideas challenged, then it's worth having a conversation. That's the whole purpose of having a conversation. It's kind of figuring out your thoughts and your ideas. But when you're just joining a team, it's no different than sports. I mean, you're basically, it's me being a Pats fan and you being a Giants fan. And then no matter what you say, I'm always going to say, Giants suck. And no matter what I say, you're always going to say the Pats suck. And it's just this tribal, we're just acting like apes. We're not actually having a real discussion and logical discussion. And I think the problem with humans is that we think that we're these logical thinking animals that look at the facts and come up with a conclusion based on that. But the truth is, we really are emotional creatures that pick a team and then look for the things that defend that. And I think that's a huge issue. And you see it in comedy. You even see it in music. I mean, there's oh my God, what the hell is Five Finger Death Punch? The super patriotic. And I was a big fan of Motor Grader back in the day. The singers, old band.
Yeah,
and
Ivan Moody.
Yeah, and I loved them. And then even when Five Finger Death Punch got together, I'm like, oh, these guys are really cool. I'm like, this seems like and then it's just little by little they got more patriotic. Like you're just playing to a crowd. You're playing to the nationalistic, not all their songs, but a lot of their songs, and it's just like, to me, like you said, it's like saying, go troops, it's like, it's just an easy way of getting claps. It's not real creative. It's not, it's not really, and some of the best, most interesting musicians I've talked to have been people who aren't like that, who aren't so, their music represents kind of who they are and are a little bit more interesting. And when you did your metal show, was there any musicians that really stuck out? Anybody that really seemed like deep thinkers and somebody who you're like, holy shit, like this person is even much more interesting than just their music?
Well, look, I'm a big Rage Against the Machine fan. I'm also a huge Ted Nugent fan. And we had Tom Morello on and we had Ted Nugent on. And I don't care about their politics. I don't give a fuck. I love Rage. I went to their shows. And in between songs, they go, hey, we're trying to get this guy out of prison. There's a pamphlet in the back. Please sign it and mail it in. Oh, yeah, whatever. I didn't care that they were doing that. And I don't care when Ted's up there going, fuck Hillary and fuck Obama and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't give a shit about their politics as long, so I never worry about that kind of stuff. But yeah, we had those two different type guys on that are the complete opposite politically. But getting back to your Patriot point.
Yeah.
When someone tells me that the Patriots suck, and the fucking Patriots suck, I go, okay, I can't have a conversation with you if you're going to say that. It's the same person that says, bashing Donald Trump. I go, all right, just answer me this. Has Donald Trump done anything good at all since he's been offered? No. I go, then I can't have a conversation with you. So that's why I cut it off. And when you say the Patriots suck, then I'm going to cut that conversation off.
Yeah, no,
because they don't suck. No matter how much you hate them, you cannot say they suck.
Well, that's kind of the right mentality, right? Like once you realize that this person is going to be way more work than they're worth to try to get through to them, and they've already picked a team. Like those are like some. I'm sure you see it on social media, and you talk about it in your book, and you talk about it on your podcast, and the people will argue for fucking ever on social media. And I'm like, one, how do you have the time? And two, has anything ever been resolved on social media? Like, has anybody ever said like, oh yeah, you're right, and you've completely changed my thinking after this 6-day argument we've been having back and forth? It's like, that's never the case. It's like, why are you wasting your time? I put out my shows and I put out my stuff, and I'll have certain guests, and even that will like spark certain debates. And I'm like, I'm not gonna argue with you over the internet. I'm like, I'll be more than happy to talk to you. Text message me, call me, and we can have a discussion about our ideas. But online, it's way too time consuming, and nothing ever gets resolved. But isn't it funny how you growing up as a Catholic, I was to. I say was because now, like most Catholics who are very religious growing up, it's a lot of them end up rebelling and going down the other road. I was Portuguese, born in Portugal, came to America, was supposed to play soccer and be a good Catholic, and I ended up playing metal music with my brother and wearing black every day, and was the complete opposite and kind of rebelled against that. But what the fuck was my question? I'm sure I had one in that that's a rant of mine. But with you growing up, were you religious? Were you did you get away from it because you were Catholic? And did anybody ever get mad at you for being into metal, similar to myself? Like, did your parents ever want you to kind of be like, oh, don't listen to that, that's Satan music type stuff?
Oh yeah, man! I was a big Sabbath and Ozzy fan, and Blizzard of Oz record with Ozzy holding the cross. My mother was like, "Don't even bring that in the house. That's devil music." And then Dying for Madman, he had the upside down cross in the back of the album cover. And then I remember I bought Mob Rules, and my mom drove me to a record store and had the devil print on on that shroud or whatever. So yeah, there was always problems with that stuff, And Highway to Hell, when Highway to Hell came out, my mom's like, "Oh my God, this is devil music." And so yeah, and then I rebelled against it once I was out of the house, 18, 19, 20. I'm like, because it fucked me up, because I really thought that anything I did, was going to go to hell. Any kind of sin I did, I was just going to burn in hell. So I just felt guilty about everything.
Yeah, it's weird how you go in the opposite direction. I had it was a couple years ago. I had the amazing Jonathan on. Obviously you know who he is.
Yeah.
And I had him on when he was doing his farewell tour, when he thought he was basically, dying, and that was it. And I saw him actually at the Hukilau in Chicopee in Massachusetts, and then soon after I had him on my show, and he just finished doing his stuff, and he's an atheist, similar to myself, but he's an atheist who can see the finish line, or thinks he could see the finish line. Obviously, this was some years ago, and he's still alive, so good for him. Obviously, he's outlasted what the doctors thought he would live. But we had this deep discussion about okay, what is it like being an atheist and knowing that the end could be soon, and it's really interesting to just the way he looked at it, and just hey, when you die, nothing happens. But I think a lot of people, similar to my parents, and I'm sure your parents are probably similar, but my parents didn't. They were kind of, again, go back to the same theme. They're kind of tribal. They were religious because they were told to be religious, and it made life a little easier. To die. I remember having arguments with my parents about it, and they're like, you believe when you die, nothing just happens, you just die? Like, oh, you got to believe in something. You have to have faith, And it's just I think it helps them cope with maybe the reality that they don't know. That's much scarier, But, I always say if an atheist does nice things, they're probably a better person than a religious person if they do nice things, because that religious person might be motivated by the fear of being judged in the afterlife, by trying to win themselves into heaven. But the atheist is doing it just because they want to do nice things. So, that's always an interesting way I look at things.
Not sure. You got a good point there. Look, one thing about religion and Catholic or whatever is sometimes it's good because it keeps people in line, keeps people from doing fucking, stuff they're not supposed to do because they're afraid that they might burn in hell or wherever they're going to go. So sometimes people need that, you know what I mean? So you could put down religion all you want, but once in a while, it's good for people you know what, if I kill this person, I'm going to go to hell, so I'm not going to kill them, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Whatever I'm going to do. So I always look at it at that angle. So sometimes, it helps someone that's really fucked up in life, gets born again and, wants to believe in what they want to believe, but then they become a good person again.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. I only knew him after his drug addiction, but he apparently he was in and out of rehab, was a mess, and then he was born again, and he believed that Jesus Christ, his Savior, gave him the energy and power to get through his addiction. And I kept telling him, I think you're giving credit to the wrong person. You deserve that credit. But if they believe that, and even if it's something that again, I don't know. I say I'm atheist, but I'm not. I don't even like the term atheist because it's the same thing. I feel like I left one group to join another group, and I just like to be agnostic. I'm not sure, and that's where I kind of stand. And it's one of those things where if it gave him the energy and the power and some moral motivation to kind of get through what he was getting through and to get his life together, then who am I to say that's a bad thing, right? It's you get to Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and some of the people who are very anti-religion. But like you said, I think if it gives people some type of moral guidelines and you can use them as like metaphors to kind of, just help analyze your life and realize that there's more to life than just consuming stuff and making money and all this other stuff and friends and family and those things are important, then then religion isn't always bad, and like everything, politics, sports, there's extreme views and there's moderate views and there's people who so I think that not in all cases it's bad, and I think I rebelled against it and went to the complete other direction because I felt like I was lied to growing up and I just wanted to rebel against it. And now as I get older, I see people who use it as like, okay, they're Catholic, they're Muslim, they're whatever, but they're not extremists. They just use it as like they like the traditions, they like getting family together. They use it as kind of just a guideline to kind of understand maybe what they should be doing or not doing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, it's not. I mean, look, some of the religions, teach people to have morals, and sometimes, and that's good for people to have some kind of morals.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In life. So if they can get it from religion, then that's fine.
But isn't it funny that people can argue, we were just talking about sports, people can argue till the end of time about, because we're always told don't talk about politics or religion during family get-togethers, and we have Thanksgiving coming right around the corner, and it's one of those things where just like, what the fuck? We can't talk about politics or religion, like two conversations that I feel like are much more important than who won last Sunday, a football game. And yeah, we could argue till the end of time about sports, and that's fine. But if we get in a disagreement about politics, it's like, oh, you shouldn't have brought up politics. I almost feel like it's a trick to get us not to talk about important things. Like, keep everybody tribal, keep everybody joining a group, be closed-minded and not be open-minded to having a discussion, because maybe if we end up talking about politics, we're going to be like, oh yeah, he makes a point, yeah, I'm making a point too, and we find some happy medium where we're like, yeah, maybe it's all bullshit, maybe it's all,
No, you're right, absolutely. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's just, and the media not, reporting all this other stuff, and just, just, don't worry about what's going on, with the pharmaceutical companies, how all the politicians are getting paid off by them, and this and that. Like, just look the other way. Don't worry about it,
Yeah, well,
so, yeah, it's a distraction. So, yeah, maybe absolutely. Because, but look, ever since, with the internet and people can research stuff, now all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, I'm not buying this bullshit that I was fed. There's a lot of research here. I can just read right on my fucking phone.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I just did an hour-and-a-half podcast last week on a JFK assassination, and with three experts, Russ Baker, Jeff Morley, and James D'Eugenio, and these guys. I mean, it's amazing how much this information is online. These guys are expert researchers, but honestly, all this stuff's online. I could spend just as much time researching this stuff. I just don't have the memory bank those guys do to remember every name and date and all that stuff. But it's amazing how you can do your own research. And Sam Tripoli is actually going to be on my show tomorrow, and I know you did an appearance on his show, Tinfoil Hat, and I love the fact that you got into the vaccine conversation and the CDC and Big Pharma, because so much of it is bullshit. And yet, you look at Big Pharma, when Clinton, Hillary, and Trump were running, we had a huge issue, a huge epidemic with heroin overdoses, especially in Massachusetts, where I'm from. And I went to, I don't even know how many overdoses, how many funerals I went to because of overdoses within like a year to 2 years or whatnot. And yet, no politician was talking about it, because they're all getting money from Big Pharma, and they have that much influence, And yesterday, I just finished watching the Celtics game, and while we're cleaning up the house, some show, I don't know what it was, some doctor show, they're talking about, how vaccines are bad, and some character in the show didn't vaccinate their kids, and there's all this propaganda about how dangerous it is, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, even though all this information's out there, it's unfortunate that still people don't do their own research. They still use these scare tactics to scare the shit out of you. And something like vaccines, which you can't even talk about. It's such a controversial issue that you can't even talk about it. I mean, I've had Del Bigtree, who did I don't know if you're familiar with the documentary Vaxxed, but
that
yeah.
was the one that was banned from Robert De Niro's
exactly.
film festival.
Yep. I had the filmmaker Del Bigtree on. And it's amazing the feedback I got. You know, it's like I either got tons of praise for having the conversation, the discussion, or I had people who were just like telling me, you know, I was crazy for putting or to promote this and all this stuff. And I have 2 kids. I have my son's turning 4 in February, and I have a daughter who's 2, and neither of them have been vaxxed. None of them have had one vaccine. And before we had our kids, I had my wife. I'm like, listen, I don't want you to just take my word for it. I'm sending her information. I'm like, read this, read that, watch this documentary, watch this interview, this and that, and we're all on the same page. And then but the thing is, the pediatricians put so much fucking pressure on the parents and scare the shit out of them, where they're just like, you know, you got to get it. They're late on their vaccines. You got to get their vaccine. If this, they could get polio. They could get this. They could get that. You know, and just scaring the crap out of parents. That even my wife, even after getting all this information and being on the same page, started having second thoughts. You know, and it sucks because a lot of parents are in that position where they just want to do the right thing, but it's almost, you know, you're talking about researching. The problem with the internet now, that there's almost too much information, that the opposite happens, where it's just like you don't even want to research anymore, because it's like it's information overload. There's so many conflicting opinions that you're just like, fuck it, I don't even know. And you know, you being a father now, how much is that, you know, have an influence on how you raise your son and all that stuff? I mean, are you willing to kind of you know, maybe schedule vaccines more apart from one another, you know, and maybe what the food he's eating, you're more careful with that type of stuff? Have you kind of questioned things a little bit, being kind of conspiratorial and not just taking what the experts, so-called experts, tell you to do?
Yes. First of all, realize that every vaccine a pediatrician gives, they get a 25% rebate from the vaccine companies.
Yep.
So there's an incentive for them to push them to get 25%.
Oh, absolutely. And
yeah,
the vaccine courts, which you talked about with Sam Tripoli, and you know, I talked about on my show. I mean, a lot of people don't even know about the vaccine courts. I'm like, that's fucking, it's crazy. Like, people forget after the 80s, you know, when they convinced the government that, like, we have to have this specific vaccine court so we don't get sued, you know, and now basically they're off the hook. They can, and the number of vaccines kids started upping dramatically after that.
Yeah, you're not allowed. It's a non-disclosure agreement, whatever. You're not allowed to say what vaccine injured your kid if you get paid from that court. Yeah, you have to keep everything quiet. So if you walk away with $3 million, you're not allowed to tell anyone what vaccine it was. That's insane.
That is insane. It's insane that Big Pharma, right? So everybody agrees that Big Pharma is this like evil empire that really only cares about making maximum profit. So if that means putting out a drug that might be harmful and then yet, you know, taking it off the market a year later, as long as they made some money off it, then they'll do it, you know, and they have budgets on the side just for, you know, all the sues, all the people who are going to sue them and all the lawsuits that they're going to get for drugs. And if you look at like the number of drugs that get put on the market and then get taken off the market soon after, it's amazing. It's a huge fucking list, and it happens every year. You know, hundreds of drugs get put on the market and taken off. And you look at it like, how strict is the FDA if the drug gets legally considered safe by the FDA, then taken off the market soon after? Like, obviously, they're all in bed together. You have a head of Pfizer working for the FDA, and people work for the FDA working for Pfizer. So it's like we all agree that Big Pharma is you know, all they care is because it's for business. I mean, people have to understand, like, it's a business, that's the bottom line. Like, they care about making money.
Right. You never want to fuck with anyone's money. Like when Trump came in office and he goes, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take these regulations off. I'm going to do that. He was fucking with people's money, Washington, D.C., the lobbyists and all that stuff. And they didn't like that. They're like, hey, I live in a fucking mansion. My mortgage is fucking $6,000 a month. Don't fuck my money up. I just, you know, almost like the comedians that, you know, bash Trump because that's what they're supposed to do. I'm just riding this out. I'm playing it safe. I'm playing it right down the middle. Don't fuck my money up. So the pharmaceutical companies, if, you know, all of a sudden it comes out where vaccines are hurting some kids, you're fucking their money up. Yeah. So they're going to do everything that I was just reading an article today, the chicken pox. There was an outbreak in like North Carolina, and they always go, it's for all the parents that don't vaccinate their kids. They always have to throw that in there. So anyone that reads that article goes, these fucking parents that don't vaccinate their kids, you know, they put my kids at harm's way. I'm like, well, if you believe in the vaccination, then your kid's not going to get it. If he's got a vaccination, he's not going to get the chicken pox.
Exactly.
If you think that vaccination is going to work, so what are you worried about? But they don't even do it. They don't even find out. They don't even put numbers in there. Like if 10 people got chicken pox, how many of them got vaccinated and how many didn't? They'll never put that in there because it's probably like 9 out of 10, most likely. It's 9 out of 10 that got the vaccination, still got the chicken pox. But they blame it on the people that, oh, these parents that don't vaccinate their kids. They always go to that. So then every parent goes, these fuckers that don't vaccinate their kids. And they don't even research it because they don't put those numbers in there because then all of a sudden it fucks up there. Like, oh, this isn't going to work. We can't put this in there because then we can't write this article.
Well, what people don't understand is that after that little news segment, they go to a commercial. And what is that commercial usually? Like 1 out of 5 times, it's a pharmaceutical drug. You know, they're selling you something. And those commercials are paying for the salaries of those people. So it's like, people have to understand they're all in bed together. You know, there's
so you think you're going to have some anti-vaxxer on, like what that Kennedy guy, you know, like he was banned from everywhere.
Yeah,
they wouldn't let him on anywhere. I had to talk to him. I did Opie and Anthony with him, and I talked to him off the air about it. And he's like, yeah, man. He goes, I get, you know, it's tough for me to get on TV because none of these stations want to have me on because they go fucking crazy because they're you know, that's their advertising dollars. The pharmaceutical companies go, why would you have that guy on that's saying that we're not, that the, you know, that these parents shouldn't get these vaccinations because it's fucking up our money. Well, so they just look. De Niro came out and said that his kid got autism from a vaccination, and he was going crazy over it, and that's why he wanted that film in that film festival that he runs. And then he got so much backlash and everything that he took the film out of there and goes, "Hey, I made a mistake, and there's too much controversy. We're just going to take that." They shut him down that fucking quick.
Well, I think what happened was initially he didn't watch the film because he did a Good Morning America interview where they initially he didn't watch the film, but everybody told him that it was horse shit. So he ended up just going along with what, because he's not the only one who runs the film festival. It's this I think another person, and they were getting a lot of backlash and said it was all bullshit. It was based on bad science and all this stuff, you know. And then eventually he's like, you know what? Let me watch the film that everybody's talking about. And then he actually wanted to try to get it back on, but there was all this backlash. And then when he was on Good Morning America, he was telling everybody, I mean, his exact words were, and I'm not misquoting him, is that I think there's something there and everybody should watch this film. And, you know, and so he's saying that, there, you know, he thinks that, because it was about the CDC whistleblower. It wasn't even an anti-vax film. It was just about one specific story. It was about a doctor, oh my God, William Thompson, I think it was. No, it's been a while since I researched this stuff and had to Del Bigtree on. But it was about this doctor at the CDC who ended up giving some documents that showed that there was a link between autistic symptoms and the MMR vaccine. And that's usually when you hear a lot of these stories, like that's kind of the culprit, is the MMR vaccine seems to be a problem vaccine. And I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact you're getting 3 viruses at once. And you don't know how strong the immune system is to a child. You don't know, you know, how they're going to handle that. And in the world, the natural world, you usually don't get 3 viruses all at once injected in your bloodstream. Like you usually get the flu, and maybe, you know, some months later you get sick again, and your body, you know, is strong enough to kind of fight that off. But to get 3 viruses into a child's bloodstream, you know, immediately. You know, obviously there can be some things can happen, you know, and can go wrong, especially if they have a
absolutely. But when my son was born, within 10 minutes, when he was out of my ex-wife's vagina, they were coming in to give him a Hep B shot, hepatitis B shot. I go, what's this? They go, it's a hepatitis B shot. I go, whoa, for what? They go, well, you know, we just, you know, it's a vaccination. And I'm like, well, what are you giving it to him now for? They go, we just like to get it out of the way. And I'm like, I go, that's what he said. We got to get it out of the way. I go, hepatitis B is a blood thing, like for needles or if you're having, you know, unprotected sex. I go, my son's just born. I go, no. They go, no, well, you know, it's better, sir. They had the needle. I go, no, he's not getting it now. He's not going to be shooting up drugs or having sex. So he's not getting that. That's what they do, right? When he comes out, hepatitis B, and she said, we'll just get it out of the way.
It's that's crazy. You're talking about a human, a little bit. You know what's crazy is they tell you to wash your fucking hands when you hold a newborn. So it's like their immune system's so delicate that you can't touch them with germs.
Don't take them out of the house.
Yeah, but you can shoot them up with shit all you want. Yeah. Well,
let me ask you something. With your kids, they're not vaccinated. Do they have a peanut allergy?
They have nothing. My kids have never.
Asthma?
Nothing.
Autism?
Nothing.
Wow. It's a shock.
Well, this is the thing is they scare the shit out of parents. And there's, and I end up connecting with a lot of other parents who have unvaccinated kids. I've had Eddie Bravo on, who I'm sure you're familiar with. And, he's never vaccinated his kids. And, some years ago I had him on and we talked about music. And then we got into talking about the vaccine thing. Because at the time, the CDC whistleblower story was just, just came out and it was a big story. And same thing, his child, another example of a child who never been vaccinated, who's completely fine, but they scare the shit out of you where they make you think that if you don't vaccinate your kids, like all these bad things are going to happen. My parents fought with me about it. My in-laws fought with me about it. Everybody fought with me about it. And I'm like, Jesus, if something goes wrong, like if one of my kids gets sick or something's wrong, I'm like, they're all going to, and then I'm going to have the guilt of like, did I fuck up, And so
they're going to pile on you.
Yeah. So I started, I started having a little bit of doubts too. And now it's like, I look back and, my kids are, obviously every parent says this, but my kids have progressed cognitively really fast and they're smart and intelligent. They're full of energy. They're barely ever sick. They get a runny nose maybe, once a year. They've gotten like a runny nose. They've never been sick. And it was just like, I tell my friends and I have a lot of friends who have kids around the same age as mine. And I'm like, they're perfect examples. I'm like, Mike, I have friends that their kids are always sick or they're allergic to peanuts or they're, they're not speaking yet or whatever. And it's just like, I'm not going to say it's the vaccines. I can't for sure, but I'm sure it doesn't help. It can cause some inflammation. You can have some type of allergic reaction. And the thing is, people like Jenny McCarthy and other people who link vaccines to the issues their kids have. People are like, oh, they probably already had those issues. You didn't pick up on it. Jim, you're a father. You're with your kids. You're with your son all the time. If there's any difference in him reacting to you or making eye contact with you or being able to respond to you or his social skills start going in the opposite direction, then you would pick up on that. You would know that, okay, he just got this vaccine and all of a sudden this stuff is happening. It's not like, he always had these symptoms and I just didn't pick up on it. So when they say the parents just didn't pick up on it, I think that's bullshit.
It's totally bullshit. Like they always say, like when a mother knows. And if a mother, the kid is fine, he's 2.5, and then all of a sudden he gets these vaccines, and all of a sudden the kid's not responding. He's looking all fucking in the distance, and he's just not talking anymore. And every mother that complains about it goes, no, that kid was fine. He was communicating, we were talking, and he got those shots, and he completely changed after that. You can't tell a mother that she's lying or she's an idiot because a mother knows, just like a dad does or whatever. So of course, absolutely. Look. At 2 months, my son was 2 months old. They convinced me to get the rotavirus vaccine. So I said, you know what? I wasn't sure. And I'm like, all right, let's just do it. We're here. Okay. He gets the rotavirus vaccine. 2 days later, he's screaming like somebody's like, pulling his teeth out with pliers. Constantly. So bring him to the emergency room. The doctor goes, he's just a colicky baby. I'm like, I don't know. It's ever since I found, he'll be fine. I come home, one more day, he's out of his mind. I bring him back to the emergency room. The doctor's there, and I go, and we're talking. The doctor's like, all right, I don't know. I go, look, I'm a first-time father. I go, what can you give me some advice as a parent? He goes, yeah. He goes, don't give the baby water, like all these little things, like as a parent, I go, let me ask you, and he's answering all my questions as a concerned parent. I go, let me ask you something. I go, is there any way that vaccine could have made him be like this? He goes, I can't answer that. I go, what do you mean? I swear to God, he goes, I can't answer that question. I go, what do you mean you can't answer that question? He goes, I can't answer that question. I go, you just answered like 7 questions about being a fucking parent. I go, what do you mean you can't answer that? He goes, look, the only thing I could say is I'm a pediatrician and a doctor, and I go to a lot of different doctors' offices around in this area in New Jersey, and I haven't seen any cases of this vaccine causing any problems with kids. That's when I knew the fucking doctors are bullshit. When that guy said, when he answered every question and they told me he couldn't answer that question, and he gives me that roundabout answer on that one.
That's wild, man.
And he was in the hospital for 5 days.
Jesus.
And over that. And, and then they reported the case to the CDC about a reaction to the vaccination, but he was in the hospital. And they said, it was just a colicky baby. I go, no, he wasn't. No, it wasn't. And that's how that was the final report. But they did report it to the CDC about there was definitely something going on with the vaccination, what happened to him there. So that was reported, but that was the final report that the doctor gave me. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Are you do you watch what like your kid eats and stuff like that? Like keep him away from like, fast
absolutely.
food and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I keep it to, he's 8 now, so, he likes, he doesn't eat McDonald's, but he, chicken fingers and fries and pizza and shit like that. But I'm not a maniac about it, but I just keep it to a limit, one cookie instead of 4.
Yeah.
Shit like that. So no, he's sharp. He's super smart. He's got no allergies. He doesn't have asthma. He has no problems at all.
And he's killing it on stage, sick. I hear.
Yeah, he's an animal. Yeah, I mean, he's singing on the stage. He's doing comedy, so all of that stuff. He's been to 17 concerts. He's seen Slipknot twice.
That's wild. Yeah, that's at 7.
Yeah,
it's funny because there's
his favorite Fear Factory song is "Dog Day Sunrise."
Great song.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Fear Factory.
By the way, my favorite Fear Factory, I hate that I know this is sacrilegious, but say it, but my favorite Fear Factory album is Archetype.
You know what's funny? That's a really good album.
It's fucking great.
I mean, he wrote forget his name, the drummer.
Raymond.
Yeah. Raymond, he did all the drum beats on a drum machine and then attempted to play them afterwards for the purpose of knowing, like, when you're playing an instrument, you can, you only go as far as your talents will let you go, and you also have certain types of styles that you like playing or whatnot. But he actually wrote those drum beats on a drum machine and then didn't even know if he was able to play them and then did it afterwards. But it was a great combination of like heavy Fear Factory and also catchy Fear Factory. Because, I mean, there were some fucking catchy ass songs on there. There's some heavy songs on there. It was that was a really, really good album. I know everybody, the typical thing is Demanufacture's the best Fear Factory album, or and their early stuff, but they're still killing it. I mean, they've been around for a fucking long time, and they're one of the first bands, one of the first really heavy bands that messed around with keyboards and made it popular. And did clean vocals, even though they were kind of a death metal band when they first started. And do you like any of the newer stuff? You like any of the any new band that you're really into?
I'm not. I've been not really. I'm always looking for the next new band. I'm just not into the music as much. Like, not that I'm not into music, but I'm not really searching it out like I used to.
Well, isn't it hard, man? There's just so many fucking bands out there, and it's really hard to filter through the typical metal band to find that gem. It's cool that you can have this really good, like, amazing following online, and you don't need radio play. Because when we grew up, like, if you weren't played on the radio, nobody knew who the hell you were. And today, you can go to a concert to a band that you've never heard of, and it could be sold out. Because they could have this amazing online following. And
yeah.
I've brought my wife. I remember it was Devil Wears Prada, Enter Shikari. I forget what was the show, but she never heard of any of these bands, and she's like, it was sold out, packed, and it wasn't obviously a theater. It was at the Palladium in Worcester, but it was. She was blown away. She's like, "Oh my God, I've never even heard of these guys." And it's like, you don't have to, because they have the internet, and now with the internet, you really don't have to be played on on the radio. Besides XM, I don't think anybody listens to the radio anymore anyways.
No, and that's what's great about a comic, too. You can have your own built-in audience. You know what I mean? So just play to them. just like these bands are doing. You know what I mean? If Comedy Central and Netflix aren't going to take a comic, like a band isn't going to get on regular radio or whatever, or an MTV, because MTV's not playing music videos anymore for years, then just do it on your own and build up your own audience and play to them. What's wrong with that? I mean, isn't it what every goal of every artist is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the way I always looked at it, too. I said, I'll just build my own audience.
Well, apparently record labels before, they used to try to, I mean, they would take a artist and then try to promote them and get them out there. And now it's the opposite. Like they're looking for bands that already have an established fan base. They look at how many fans they have on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, how many subscribers on YouTube, and then they sign them. So it's like, but in that case, why the hell do you even need a record label? It is one of those things where I get it. Like you're talking about, they have big money and ability to kind of promote in a way that it would be much harder for the artists. But if you really want to have full freedom, why the fuck not? And comedians are doing that. They're putting out their own specials, right?
Yeah, I've done it a couple times. Yeah, because you own your stuff. So you get paid every time through like Sound Exchange, every time it airs on satellite radio or Spotify or YouTube or Pandora. So why not? Why give it to anybody else?
And the thing with comedy, I think it's a lot like metal music and hard rock. Even though people can go online and hear the same jokes, it's not the same as it live. When you go to a comedy show live, there's something about the energy of the room and everybody being there together. And then, especially when you're doing smaller shows and it's more intimate and you feel like you're really close to the comedian can actually see you out in the crowd. I think there's something that, seeing a Netflix special or something online, you're still missing something, So I think there's always going to be a desire to go to shows and see live performances.
Absolutely. Look, you can see an AC/DC concert on YouTube, and you can even watch it through your TV. But when you go to an AC/DC live concert, it's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's...
and that's the same thing with comedy, you know what I mean? Like, people come to... There's two girls came to my show Saturday night. They're like, this is our first time we ever been to a comedy show. We always watched it on TV. Oh, my God, it was so good. I'm like, yeah, because you never know what's going to happen. Like, yeah, when that guy in the crowd yelled that, and then you said that to that person, and this was going on. I'm like, yeah, you never know what's going to happen at a live show.
Yeah, well, before my wife and I had kids, we lived at the Funny Bone and Hukilau and just constantly going to comedy shows. And it's amazing because after we had kids, I thought, okay, we could still do like a similar type of date night thing. The kids go to sleep, we pop open a bottle of wine, and we watch some Netflix specials. And she doesn't get into it. She can't get into it. For some reason, she doesn't laugh. She doesn't find it as funny. But the exact same set live, she'll be laughing her ass off. And there's something about energy. It's like something we can't put into words. Like there's something about energy in a room when you put the people together. Same thing with music. You watch. I always tell people, I'm like, you want to get into heavy metal, go to a show. First, because and then you kind of get it, you understand it. When you feel the energy in the room, when you see everybody just kind of just jumping around and going crazy, I'm like, you just can't capture that, on a CD, and I think comedy is the same way. There's something about everybody being together and everybody being a part of this roller coaster. Because when you're the comedian, and I think comedy is one of the fucking hardest things. I know you always talk about playing music and how you were never really good at playing an instrument, but I think you do one of the hardest jobs anybody could do, and that's going on stage and make people laugh. And humor isn't a universal thing. It's you go play in the Hartford Funny Bone, or you go play in Nashville, or you play somewhere else. It's like you're talking about different people with different backgrounds, and you have to make everybody laugh. And I that's a hard ass thing. It's not something that anybody can do. I think it just, there's something intimidating about going on stage and not knowing if they're gonna like what you're saying. Where like when you go see a musician, you're usually going to see them because you already like their work, And when you're doing new material as a comedian, it's like you don't even know if they're gonna like this new stuff. They might like your old special, but they might not like your new material. So it's definitely really hard. Do you do most of your writing on stage, or do you do a lot of actual physical writing? Just on the road or when you're traveling or whatnot?
A little of both. That's a really good point about Journey you're going to see Journey. Journey knows, the band knows, okay, we're doing these 12 hits, these massive hits. So we know they're going to go over well. We might do like a song or two, a new one or whatever, but we pretty much know the audience is going to love us because they're going to know every word to every song that we're going to play. And a comic, they have no idea what we're going to do when we go on stage. They don't know, they don't even know our material, what we're going to say. So yeah, but I love that. I love that, just not knowing. Like, it gives me a rush. I don't get in a rut because I know every show is different. And and every joke is it going to land? Is it not? I'm almost like a quarterback up there, like Peyton Manning when he got to the line. He's like, okay, I'm going to change the play. Look at that fucking guy right there. Let me move this guy. I see a one-on-one out there. So I'm thinking ahead. I'm like, all right, that's not working. Maybe I'm too dirty. Let me go a little clean. Or they like the edgy stuff, so I'm going to stick with this. So I'm constantly making adjustments up there all the time because it's not the same crowd all the time. So I love that.
Yeah, it's because like you said, like you're figuring out, okay, what are they enjoying, what are they not? You play, and I guess it's like a good DJ back in the day. It's like now DJ.
Yeah, you're in the moment. You have to be in that moment.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Really paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a DJ. That's what they used to do. They used to kind of feel out the crowd, or like, okay, they like this type of music, or they're liking this, this slower stuff or heavier stuff or whatnot. Now DJs just hit play and fist pump.
Yeah.
What's his name? Russell Peterson's always talking about, because he actually apparently he's a really good DJ, and he's always bashing DJs today because he's like, they don't even do anything. They just hit play and get millions of dollars. They just fist pump and hop around. And I think comedy is a lot like what DJs used to do and feel out the crowd. And that can't be easy, right? Because I mean, if you have like this set mind on what jokes you're gonna do, roughly, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, they're not feeling this. I mean, you just have to memorize a bunch of shit, even if you don't do it.
No, you just no. I mean, I pretty much have the set that I'm going to do, but sometimes the order isn't right. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes if the crowd's a little sensitive, I'm like, all right, I need to start off. I need them to like me. I need to get them on my side before I can hit them with some more edgier stuff, because they're, I might hit them too early and they're not going to buy it. So once they like me, then I can pretty much do whatever I want. Or some crowds, I can just do it right off the top. I just go fucking, I don't give a shit right off the top, which I like to do. But sometimes I got to ease them into it. So that's what I'm saying. So I always have the same material. I'm just moving it around.
Well, I love the roller coaster of one of my favorite things is when a comedian loses the crowd. They don't lose me because I don't give a shit. I don't care how offensive you are or whatnot. To me, if it's funny, I don't care who you offend. But it's I love when a comedian loses the crowd, and then you can see them work the crowd back, and by the end of the show, the crowd loves them again. And it's just this amazing roller coaster of like, you see them like, okay, and you see the comedian like working the crowd, like they're figuring out, okay, what are these guys like, or how can I get them back on my side, and it's do you find yourself ever in those situations where you end up losing a crowd and you're like, okay, I'll get this crowd back, I have the confidence, I'll get these guys back by the end of the show, and they'll be standing up clapping by the end of the show?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a challenge. I love that challenge. Riding that line where, oh man, how am I gonna win this crowd back over? Maybe I can't, and then you get pissed at yourself if you can't win them over and you lost them the whole show. So yeah, you can never mail it in as a comic.
Yeah.
Because every show is different. Even if you're doing 2 in one night, the first show could be you could have said anything and they would have laughed. And the second show, you're doing that same material and they're not laughing at anything. You're like, what the fuck? It's the same jokes. So you always, so you can never mail it in. So I just know I got that rush going up there where I'm just not going to be bored with my job. I never want to be bored with my job.
Yeah, and well, that's the beautiful thing about comedy is that you're once a special's out, soon after you can work on new stuff and having that new journey. And the thing is, too, you're growing as a person, too, right? Now you're a father of a 8-year-old son. You're going through life experiences. I almost feel like it's necessary to kind of go through some stuff before you start writing again, right? To have some more things to talk about.
Absolutely. Anything good going on in your life, that's what you talk about. It's great. Just experience stuff and then just writing about it. So, no, I did a whole special about my divorce that's going to come out in a couple of months. You know, I went through it, it sucked or whatever, and I just came out at the other end, and I finally started writing jokes about it. And, you know, I got a great material out of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great way of dealing with, you know, negativity. You know, the same way that we listen to metal or dark music to kind of help us get through stuff. I think, you know, if it's comedy, if it's music, like, we need these things because we live in this shitty, you know, this shitty world where we're just told to pick a political team and to fight over this nonsense, and we're sold propaganda, and you know, we're constantly just told to buy shit that we don't really need, and because it'll bring you happiness, and it doesn't. You know, one of my favorite quotes is actually a Hatebreed album, you know, Satisfaction's the Death of Desire, and it's such a really, I remember growing up, that was such an important quote to me, because I'm like, dude, isn't that fucking true? Satisfaction's the death of desire. Like, you're motivated, you think you desire this thing, and then once you have it, that desire's gone, you're satisfied, and it's over, and then you go move on to the next thing, and you realize how the things that last, that keep you happy for long periods of time, are things like friends and family and experiences. You know, the times you and your friends went to a concert and had this amazing fun experience, or when you guys went out and hooked up with these girls and got hammered or whatnot. Those are the things that stick with you. It's not that really expensive car or that really big house or whatever, you know, that will keep you happy for a little bit, and then soon after it'll just be a house, it'll just be a car, and then you'll have to buy the new one because you know, the new version came out. You know, you have to get the new iPhone, you have to get, you know, keep consuming. So you know, it's funny how one of my favorite quotes, and it was really important to me growing up, was, you know, a title of a metal album.
You know how many the Hatebreed lyrics that got me through some shit, you know, perseverance, proven, like the lyrics and that, you know, and all that shit. And it's amazing. Look, I remember I had an ex-girlfriend that always liked designer bags, and when a new Louis Vuitton was coming out, she had to get on the list, and she would get the bag, and it was like $3,000, and she'd be jumping up and down. And 15 minutes later, she's back to her normal self. I go, you got a 15-minute rush out of that bag.
Yeah.
I go, the one you bought a year before, you don't like anymore because that's old. Remember that rush you got for 15? I go, that bag did not make you happier. For 15 minutes, you were excited. You got the bag, and now you're back to just being the same person you were. So that bag does nothing for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is that they find these tribal people in like the Amazon and who are completely detached from other civilizations, and they have like zero signs of anxiety and depression and whatnot. And then if you look at like how many celebrities, you know, are drug overdose, on antidepressants, self-medicating with whatever it may be, it's one of those things where it's you realize, okay, this person from the outside looking in looks like they have everything. They have all the things that we're told in life will bring us happiness. They have money, they have fame, they have beautiful people surrounding them, beautiful wife or beautiful husband, whatever, beautiful kids, and yet they're unhappy. And I think, you know, it's a lot of it's just propaganda because it's marketing. You know, it's Edward Bernays and understanding how, you know, you have to keep people consuming and how to get people to consume, and how we have things pulling, you know, at our subconscious and getting us to keep telling us that, like, oh no, you need to get this new iPhone, this is going to make you happy, you need to get the new Cadillac because this will make you happy, and then we keep doing it, and then it's like you said, it's temporary, and then you have to get the new one, and you got to get the new one, and it keeps us these sheeple, you know, we're just going with the herd, you know, and we're just mindless consumers, and it puts us in debt. I mean, you look at kids. I mean, kids are given credit cards at a young age. They're put in debt. Then they have to, you know, or even college puts them in debt, and then next thing you know, they end up being stuck in this system of just consuming and trying to pay off this debt, and then they're in this mindless, unfulfilling job, and then they end up having to, you know, just buy shit to keep them temporarily happy, and then that doesn't last, so then they buy more stuff, which means they create more debt. So it's just this vicious cycle, you know, and you know, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast. You know, my full-time job is we have this small little construction company, and we do, you know, concrete work or whatnot. And it's not fulfilling. It's not, you know, and this podcast to me was, you know, an awful investment, but it made me happy, and it made me feel like I was doing something. And I named it the Ripple Effect podcast after one of the songs I wrote called The Ripple Effect. And it was, you know, I truly believe that we all can make a difference, even if it's a small ripple. You never know what it turns out to be. and I think that's an important kind of message for everybody, because it's really easy to get stuck in a hole of working a full-time fucking job that you hate and being miserable and not doing something like stand-up comedy. And you look at what's his name, Dean Del Rey, how late he got into comedy. It's crazy, and every other adult around him would be like, what, are you fucking crazy? Like, you can't get a job and just quit chasing your dreams. But he didn't, and now he's a successful comedian, very late in his life, so I think those stories are really important. They're important for people to listen to, because it's never too late to chase what you love.
It's not. Look, I always stress to my son, I go, be low maintenance. I go, all this other shit, you don't need the best this, the best that. I go, wear jeans and a T-shirt every day. Wear shorts and a T-shirt. Who gives a shit about who's got the new Nikes and I need this? Because I go, once in a while, yeah, you can splurge for that. If everyone has it or whatever, and you want to feel like you have to fit in, especially when you're young. Yeah. And in 7th, 8th grade, you don't want to be like the fucking dork that has nothing and everyone's just past you and playing Fortnite and you have no idea what it is. I go, but other than that, I go, you really just, I go, look, Luke, I get a used car. That's my son. I go, I get a used car every 4 years. I trade in my used car. I get another used car. Who gives a shit? Who am I trying to impress by having a brand? I can drive around or whatever the fuck I want. But who am I trying to impress? People on the road that I don't know? It doesn't matter. I go, so just live like that. I go, and then have your money and, something that you really enjoy, spend it on that. Not this superficial bullshit. So I really instill that in him. He already knows, at this age, that's my main focus with him is to do that. And don't get in a relationship or a job where you hate, and you feel like you have to take it. There's so many comics that were great that I started with that got out of the business because they wanted health insurance, or they had a girlfriend that said, look, you can't just, work for $50 on the weekend. What are you doing? You got to get a regular job. And they got out of the business. And there was so much talent out there that would have made it if they would have just hung in there. And just about getting a relationship, a shitty relationship, because you feel like you just got to get, you got to conform to what everybody else is doing. I go, don't do any of that.
That's awesome advice. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because really, I was telling my friend the other day, I'm a big Miami Dolphin fan. I go, I've been to 5 games this year. I go, because I'll spend my money on that because I really enjoy that. I'll fucking fly to Florida for the weekend and go to a game. It's great. You hang out, you tailgate. I got buddies down there. We're drinking beers. We go to the game. It's fucking 80 and sunny. I'm like, I'll spend my money on that, not on a Jaguar. I'm not getting any satisfaction out of that.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I drive a Jaguar, but I
love a Jaguar, but I won't get satisfaction out of that.
It's used. But
but I'm just saying. So I don't, I'll spend my money on that. I go, so spend something that you really enjoy and you like doing.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think the similarities with all this stuff is that it's you're with people, you're enjoying the stuff with other people. It's stuff that that you're with your friends, you're enjoying this experience, and you're with other people, and I think that's super important. I think I had this Australian author CJ Werleman, and I won't hold you up too long because I know that we're probably already going longer than I initially told you, but and we were talking about the difference between Australia and America, and he was talking about pub culture, how in Australia they still have pub culture. You go to what was considered the public house. People would go there. People would have discussions and talks and sit around and have actual conversations. What we're doing, what you and I are doing, and that's another reason why I love doing these podcasts, because I feel like people they save such little time out of their day to actually just share ideas and stories and communicate and share their ideas and have other people share theirs and you learn in this whole process that people are just going along with the motion and they don't ever sit and self-reflect and have time to think and reevaluate their actions and I think it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue with American culture. It's really easy just to kind of go along and just go with get on this wave and just keep going, riding it, and and never really stop and think. And I think music has been a beautiful music and comedy, because comedy, another thing, like how many times do people laugh at your jokes because they're like, because it's fucking true, right? Because it's true, and it's something that maybe we haven't put any thought into, but that's what you do as a comedian. You put thought into it. You think about things, you analyze things, and people laugh because it's true. And same thing with music. Somebody writes something, you're like, oh fuck, that's exactly how I feel. I might not have the linguistic ability to put it into words, but this artist did, and it's exactly how I feel, and it gives you some satisfaction because of it, because somebody else is feeling and thinking the things you're feeling and thinking. And so I think it's really important to be able to self-reflect, be around other people, communicate, and have fun and do those type of things. Because I have a Jaguar. It's a 2014. It's not new but I love it. And I loved it when I bought it recently. But it's just a car. Soon afterwards, I love it. You know why I love it? I love it because I get to enjoy it with my son. I get to play music that I love in it. I get to go on trips in it. But if I was driving in a convertible Corvette by myself everywhere, I wouldn't enjoy the vehicle as much, because I'd be lonely, trying to show off and trying to impress people. But if you're enjoying it with other people, I think that's super important. You look at like somebody in prison, they're around murderers, killers, the worst of the worst people, and then you punish them by isolating them, right? So if you misbehave, they put you in isolation, they put you by yourself, and that's the worst punishment, because we're kind of designed to be around people. We're social creatures, and I think we get a lot from that. So I love that message. I love what you're doing with your son, and I think being a dad's probably I say that stand-up comedy is one of the hardest things you could do. I think you would probably agree being a dad's probably tops that, and it's a life-changing experience, and it sounds like you're giving the right advice, and you're definitely teaching your son to be a good, productive human being who has its mindset, because we're in this fucking crazy world. And you talk about social media, who knows what type of world our kid's going to live in the next 10, 20 years, and how social media is going to fuck them up, because people aren't going to even be able to have a 1-hour conversation during a podcast, because everybody's so used to fucking text messaging and tweeting and all this stuff, and nobody knows how to actually sit down and talk. So it's weird. Is that something you worry about? Just kind of, when you... Well,
I don't get... He doesn't really play video games. He doesn't, his face is embedded in an iPad or a phone. He doesn't have a phone, obviously. But if I'm going on a long trip, I'll give him an iPad. He can play some games while he's in the back seat, just so he's not bored. But I'm just like, no, I don't want him just, being on a phone and texting and just playing video games on an iPad the whole time. I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. You know what I mean? We can just hang. So, I'm trying not to do that. He doesn't need an iPad every time we go to a restaurant. He could sit there, we could talk instead of him playing games. Well, that's until the food comes out.
Well, that's a cool thing about that age, right? He's at that age where you can actually sit down and have conversations with him. You can, I think that's my son's turning 4, and we can, now we can actually start having conversations. I think it's awesome being able to have those conversations. I remember the first time my dad and I actually sat down and had a conversation about, like two adults. It was mind blowing. So I can't wait till my son and I can talk like two adults and just talk about life and whatnot. It'll be a fun experience, Jim. But hey, I won't hold you up anymore. I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate your time. I can't thank you enough for being on. I know we could probably go down rabbit holes for metal music and conspiracies and stand-up comedy, and there's tons of things to talk about. So hopefully sometime in the future I have you back on, and let everybody know where they can get your book. Obviously your podcast is very popular, and if you're listening to this, obviously where people can get podcasts. But your book is available.
Yeah, my podcast is Comedy Metal Midgets, up on iTunes. I release it every week. And then my book is Everybody is Awful Except You. It's on Amazon and in bookstores. And one more thing about a conspiracy theory. I was ahead of the game when I said back in the late 90s that AIDS was a farce. That AIDS, that heterosexual men were not getting AIDS. I was the first one to say it. People thought I was crazy. They wanted to fucking kill me. They called me an idiot and everything else. I said, I'm telling you, if these rock stars, these fucking 80s guys and Motley Crue and Slash and David Lee Roth are not dying from AIDS, heterosexuals are not getting it. It's all propaganda by the fucking pharmaceutical companies, by the CDC, scaring people to wear condoms, which is fine because you want people to wear condoms. You want them to be safe. You don't want to be spreading all these other diseases. But heterosexual males were not getting it, like they said. I remember on MTV back in the day, like after Magic Johnson said he was HIV positive, they said 1 out of 2 heterosexual males has HIV. 1 out of every 2. And I remember fucking running to the doctor. I'm like, oh my God, I got an AIDS test. I was already going to sell all my stuff. I was already planning a garage sale because I thought I was going to die and I was going to sell all my stuff. And it was all bullshit. But they scared the shit out of everybody. I'm like, this is not true. There's no way. People aren't dropping like flies. And then when people are like, I don't want to get AIDS, I'm like, name one of your male friends that's not gay or shot up drugs that got AIDS. Name one. Well, I don't know, but I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. I go, it's not happening. Your guy friend that fucks 20 women a year is not HIV positive.
Well, it's the same thing with the swine flu and all the other diseases.
Oh, yeah.
Every year they have to have this new thing where they have to scare the shit out of you. And it's like, and then you do your research and like, the regular flu has killed more people than the swine flu. Like, what are we talking about? Like, this isn't an epidemic. This isn't, they're just scaring the shit out of you to get these people to take these flus. And like, you have to think about it. Like, somebody must be profiting. Who the hell is just giving out free flu shots? Like
20,000 people. They say 20,000 people a year die of the flu. That's bullshit. 20,000 are not dying of flu. If someone dies from pneumonia, that's 88 years old. They put that under the flu. They throw that under there. There's a whole other thing, like all these other, people are dying from other stuff and they put it under the flu. So that's why when you could drive through a CVS or the drive-through and some guy could come out and give you a shot in the arm so they could sell fucking the flu vaccine.
Well, CVS
20,000 people a year are not dying from the flu. That's all bullshit.
Well, CVS is one of the biggest companies, growing, and then consistently for a while now, and it's all because of their drugs. I mean, they have fucking drive-throughs. We're one of two countries. I think New Zealand is the other one who let pharmaceutical companies advertise online. And I've had people on like Dr. Brzezinski. I don't know if you know who Dr. Brzezinski is, but he had a big fight with the FDA with getting his drug FDA approved. Or his anti-cancer methods and therapies. And it's just like, it's crazy. Like he got so much freaking pushback. And then when I had him on the show, I had all these trolls who just came on and just told me it was all pseudoscience, it was all nonsense. And it's like, you go check their Twitter account, you go check, and it's like, it's all like just these bots. Like none of them are real accounts. And right. And it's like, who the fuck's doing this? Who? And in his documentary, Brzezinski, I forget. It's free on YouTube. If anybody wants to find it, it's on Amazon. It's everywhere available. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Brzezinski. But it's an amazing story about this guy who actually had a treatment that had positive effects on cancer. And the only people who can go to him now are people who are terminally ill because it wasn't FDA approved. The FDA refused to approve it and brought him to court over and over again. He kept winning, and they kept bringing him to court over and over again. And so the only way you can use this, what they consider experimental treatment, because it's not FDA approved, are people who are terminally ill, who are already at the end of their, of their chances of living. And yet he still has people who are alive today and supporting him who should have been dead and who he helped. And the way I look at it is chemo and radiation kills a lot of fucking people. And the thing is, when you do chemo and radiation, what they don't tell you is the chances of other cancers of coming back or other cancers happening increase. So if they cure you of one type of cancer, with this treatment, they're actually completely demolishing your body, and the chances of you getting another cancer increases. And I had this guy. Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who I'm big into like diet and nutrition and homeopathic medicines and natural, using food as your medicine and supplements and vitamins. And this guy, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, he's big into the ketogenic diet, and I've been doing it for some years now. Remove grains and sugars from your diet. And he has this book called Cancer is a Metabolic Disease, and he's from the Boston University or Boston College, one of the two. But he has 150 peer-reviewed studies proving that because what people understand is that cancer cells feed off glucose for energy. So if you suppress your body of glucose, of sugar, it can kill the cancer cells. You can actually starve the cancer cells. And there's all these studies proving it can help. It can actually cure people of disease and all this stuff. And nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to support it. Nobody wants to research it. Nobody wants to look into it. And it's all because who the hell can benefit from a therapy that's just based on the way you eat? Nobody can benefit. So who's going to research that stuff? People are going to put in money in researching some synthetic drug that ends up helping you out, and they can put you on for the rest of your life, and probably has some side effects that will cause you to wanting some other drugs. And so it's just this vicious cycle of they don't want you dead. They just want you unhealthy for as long as possible. And yeah.
No, absolutely. If a regular doctor comes out and says, I support this and I think this guy is right, he could lose his medical license. Now, think about it. This guy lives in the suburbs with his wife. They got 2 kids. They got 2 SUVs in the driveway. His mortgage payments are $5,000 a month, and he lives in a $750,000 house. You think he's going to risk saying that and losing his license over that?
And not just that, they're going to college, and these universities are getting money from pharmaceutical companies. So the research and the stuff that they're teaching these doctors, and that's the thing, some of these doctors, it's not even their own fault. They're only, I've had Dr. Dominic D'Agostino on, who's big into the ketogenic diet and stuff like that, and I've had other doctors on, and they tell you, usually a nurse will know more about diet and nutrition than a doctor. You literally study, out of all the years you do of college and you do at the universities, they literally will take 1 day just to teach about diet and nutrition. And it's wait, before,
it's an 8-hour course.
Yeah, it's isn't that fucking crazy? But yet we've made it. How many thousands of years has the human beings been around, right? And yet we've survived before these synthetic drugs, and and you look Eastern medicine, and we all agree that how can a doctor tell you that if you eat right, then it can improve your health, but yet it tells you that vitamins don't work. It's you can't have both, because vitamins are from food. The reason why food is making you healthier is because it has those vitamins. It's because you're increasing your vitamin D, your D3 or whatever. You're increasing your calcium. You're increasing your omega-3s and all this stuff. But yet you tell me that taking supplements don't work. Okay, so. But yet, if I eat healthy, why is it working? It's because I'm getting those specific vitamins. So it's nonsense. It's such bullshit. And when people look at almost everything, if it doesn't matter if it's politics, if it's the health industry, the medical industry, all this stuff, it's all motivated by money. And people have to understand when it's a for-profit, there's guys with suits and ties who are looking at graphs and looking at quarterly gains, and all they give a shit about is how do we make maximum money? How do we keep our stockholders happy? How do we keep increasing our value? And it doesn't matter if that means putting out a drug that they know is going to harm people and isn't safe. It doesn't matter if it, what it means. They just have to. That's their one profit. A corporation is only in business for one reason. That's to make money. And when medicine is a for-profit industry, that's what happens. And it's amazing. It boggles my mind when people kind of will agree with big pharma being this evil thing, but the same big pharma companies that do vaccines and a lot of these flu shots and all this stuff, then that's okay. That's fine. They don't really care about your well-being when it comes down to giving you too many antidepressants that don't work and can make you commit suicide, or giving you
and every school shooter's on them.
Yeah, and they never once talk about it. They never once tell you. These kids are blood tests. How come every single one of these school shooters are? Why isn't there a list of what drugs they're on so parents can look at it and be like, hey, maybe I should look into the side effects of this drug. Maybe I should look into. Look at what is it? Prozac in the 90s. How many fucking people were committing suicide and doing crazy shit on Prozac? The fact that an antidepressant has a side effect that is suicide, what the fuck? What is wrong with the world? You're trying to prevent committing suicide, and you're taking a drug that can actually, increase your chances of suicide. It makes no sense.
It's insane. It's insane.
And when people
What's that? I'm sorry. What was that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
My niece worked for Coca-Cola. Her job, she got out of college, she needed money. Her job was to scour the internet, and if anyone wrote anything bad about aspartame being bad for you, she needed to set up an account, like, on yahoo.com or wherever website wrote an article that aspartame might not be good, and it's not good in sodas, that she'd have to set up an account with a fake name and write in the comments section how there's been all these studies that's not true, 100% this is false, this is, fake science, whatever like that. Aspartame has been around for a long time. 126 doctors said it's, there's no health issues with it at all. And she knew it was bullshit. She wouldn't even drink it. But she had to, Coca-Cola paid her to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
to just go in any comment, right? In any comment, just keep saying how it's great and put a link to this article that, some guy that was getting paid by Coca-Cola wrote that aspartame isn't, is good for you and is not harmful at all. And that was her job.
Well, you brought up Robert Kennedy Jr. and when you look at, he was a big reason one of the big reasons on how they got thimerosal, a mercury preservative, out of vaccines. And, if you got a vaccine prior to him, basically making this public and getting it removed, a pediatrician or a doctor would tell you, oh, no, it's completely safe. It's completely safe. It's completely safe. And then it gets removed. And it's like, okay, so all those poor people who were told it was safe prior to finally the evidence was so overwhelming that they had to remove it, like, you lied. And you're just being told information by the manufacturer, the people who profit from this. That's where you're getting your information from. You're getting your information from the people who are trying to sell this stuff. It's like, I know. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And then when you logically think about it, it's it's insanity. But I almost feel like
it's like me selling a T-shirt after a show, and the guy goes, "You have an extra large?" I go, "I only get a large." He's like, "Oh man." He goes, "That's going to be tight on me." I go, "It's not going to shrink." Okay, then I'll buy it. I'm going to tell him whatever he wants. I want to sell that fucking shirt. I want to put it in my suitcase and fly home with it. Yeah, they're pre-shrunk. It won't shrink. It's going to be a little big on me, the large. No, it's going to shrink. Once you wash it, it'll shrink. Whatever you need to hear.
I mean, they're all basically like used car salesmen. They're just trying to... I mean, they're going to tell you whatever you want. You go to look at a pickup truck, and then they'll be like, "Oh, we have this Pinto that if we don't have that pickup truck you're looking for, but we have this this wagon or something else that you don't want," and they're trying to tell you how great it is and try to sell you it. It's insanity, and that's the thing. I love the fact that you're willing to talk about this stuff, because it is a controversial topic, and it's a controversial topic, a lot of this stuff, not because the information's not out there and we're saying anything that's untrue, but just because they've done such a great job of getting people to just believe the propaganda that, we grew up in a world where, people who have a doctor, on their name tag, we just believe that everything they say must be true, and everything they say is this, like, they're these moral species, these moral people who don't also care about money and aren't also influenced by the pharmaceutical salesman who walks in there and says, "Hey, we give you these paid vacations, or we hook you up with we some way help you out if you sell this our new drug or whatnot." And so it's it is. It's one of those things where I'm just a podcaster, so I talk about everything and anything, and I'm not afraid to touch these topics. But it's always refreshing when somebody, like when I heard you on Sam Tripoli's show, I was like, holy shit! I'm like, Jim's not just talking about it; he really knows his shit about it. I mean, he's going deep into the conversation. So have you ever thought about talking about some of the conspiratorial ideas of yours on stage, or is that something you kind of don't get too into?
Not really. I talked about a little about the pharmaceutical companies a little bit, and a few years back on one of my stand-up specials. But I don't get into. I used to about the AIDS and stuff. I think, and sometimes if it doesn't work, I'm not going to push it. I know. I usually try a bit like 3 times, and it just gets nothing, and the crowd's just staring at me like, all right, this just isn't going to work. And I'm not just going to do it just because I'm too bad. I'm trying to get my message out there. You know what I mean? Like, I still got to perform and entertain. but I'll try. But if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good point, because people like Bill Hicks and George Carlin, I mean, later in their careers, they got to the point where it almost was, I mean, and they're two of my favorite comedians of all time, but it was to the point where I almost feel like I enjoyed them more because of their message, and it was less about being funny, you know? And
right.
And I think that can be a problem too, because it's like, and then you get so caught up in getting your message out, and you forget that, like, okay, there's still this art form that I should be true to. And if I'm here to try to make people laugh, then that should be my main goal. And if I can get a message out or talk about something that I think is important to talk about in the process, then great. You know, it's you know, then, yeah, you're right. That's probably the best way of looking at it. Don't force something just because you're trying to get the message out, because then you kind of lose track of what your purpose is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, you know, I'm not sure if, but like I said, if I try a bit and it doesn't work, I'm like, all right, whatever. I got to move on.
Awesome. Well, I think next time I have you on, maybe we'll go down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
I mean, the thing that makes conspiracies interesting to me is that when you look into it, there's a lot, like the reason why, I tell people all the time, like the reason why these things stay around as long as they are, because of the fact that there's a lot of bits and pieces that are true. And then when you do your research, you're like, holy shit, like, they're not just jumping to conclusions. There's a lot of dots. And a lot of times these dots, you think they're connecting them and they're far apart, but they're a lot closer than you think. And a lot of this stuff, you know, when you do your research, you're like, holy shit, there's a lot of evidence here and a lot of truth here. And that's why people still believe the things they believe. And obviously there's extreme examples like reptilians and stuff like that. But when it comes to, I mean, look at the Jfk assassination. I just did, like I said, I just did a show, and I've done, you know, multiple shows on it in the past. And if the democratically elected president of the United States of America in broad daylight can get shot in the head, okay, then the guy who supposedly, allegedly, you know, shot him and said, you know, on tape that I was a patsy, can get shot. And then, you know, then the guy who kills him, you know, Jack Ruby, also ends up mysteriously dying. And then his brother, Robert Kennedy, ends up running for president. He ends up dying. Like, if that shit can happen, which sounds like something out of a fucking Denzel movie, then what the hell can't happen, you know?
I know.
You know, it's like, you have to think about, like, if that can happen, then really, like, there's nothing that seems like it's off limits, you know? So I think, you know, learning, and it's weird, because if you talk about current things that are kind of conspiratorial, people are much more sensitive. But when you talk about historical stuff, like, nobody gets offended talking about JFK. You know, nobody's like,
no, I know, it's weird. Yeah, they don't have that reaction going crazy.
Yeah, but if you bring up 9/11, you know, or you bring up, like, you know, something more recent, people will be like, oh, you know, that's fucked up. You know, that's not true. This and that, and it's like, you know, I think a lot of it's maybe just emotional reaction, because when you see it happen, or you know people who are involved in it, you know, emotionally you just don't want to believe it. You know, it's one of those things where it's almost like if somebody tells you your girlfriend or your wife's cheating on you, your first reaction is like, no, that's bullshit. You know, and it's just you know, there's a quote, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. And I think that's like a lot of people. It's once you've been tricked, it's much harder to convince them that, like, they've been lied to, and the world as they know it might not be the way that they think it is, you know. So it's yeah, it's interesting stuff. But yeah, hopefully we'll have you on in the near future, and we'll talk more, Jim. I can't say thank you enough for taking this time to be on the show. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.
Oh yeah, definitely. Look, we talked about Fear Factory and you know, and everything else. No, I love that. Absolutely. You know.
Yeah,
perfect. Right up my alley. Yeah,
these are my favorite type of conversation, when you have somebody on who have a lot of different interests and go wherever the conversation takes you. You know, these are the funnest conversations. The only thing we need is we needed a couple of drinks. That was the only thing we were missing. Hanging out at a bar, having a couple of drinks, doing the same thing. You know, but that's what I always try to capture. I always tell my guests, I'm like, it's not an interview really. I'm like, I try to capture like what we would be doing if we were hanging out, having some bourbon, having some cigars, and bullshitting for an hour. I'm like, that's what I try to capture. Hopefully, just casual conversation.
Definitely.
So
no, it was great, man. Absolutely.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it, and I'll send you all the links once it shows up. If you want to share it or whatnot, I'll put all the links to your new book, your podcast, all that stuff, also in the show description, so that way people can get to it. And thanks again. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll talk again soon.
Perfect, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was great.
Thanks, Jim. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Yep, bye.